You see that as soon as I start adding shadows, things start to gain three-dimensionality. So today we are going to make a couple sketches of horses in watercolor, with the references and my palette on the side visible, so to get hopefully a bit of an insight on my sketching approach from how I interpret a reference to mixing my colors. If you've been struggling with learning watercolor or having a hard time finding useful resources online, you're going to love my watercolor guide, brand new, called An Introduction to Watercolor, now available on my website at a special price for a limited time only. In this guide, I included everything I wish I knew 6 years ago when I started my journey towards mastering this beautiful medium. Things I learned along the way, and other things I discovered through repeated failures. Failures you don't need to repeat. In my guide, you'll find the most useful information about material, theory, technique, and everything you need to easily start with watercolor, all presented beautifully in an easy-to-access PDF. Link in the description. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I usually start by trying to reduce main shapes to ovals or simple geometric figures. In this case, I'm using an oval for the head, and I then try to set guidelines to position the eyes, always moving from left to right and back. This helps me keeping things in proportions and symmetrical. Here I also marked the longitudinal line that connects the horse's forehead to its nose. It also allows me to create a separation between planes that face different directions, in this case the top and the side. Also putting down a shape for the ears. I'm obviously not trying to make a perfect drawing. We want to avoid creating too many constraints for when we are going to paint. If you're spending too much time refining our lines and creating the perfect drawing, we are just going to be very conscious of not ruining it and find it a hard time to cover it with paint. What instead is that we want to do is to promote freedom. So the drawing is just there to give us a generic outline and a few boundaries. Sometimes I don't even make one to give myself more freedom to experiment. After all, sketching is to promote expressivity and improve our skills. If you were wondering what colors I'm using, here they are. Yellow ochre, burnt sienna, a touch of neutral tint, ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. The rest is just leftover colors that always sit on my palette, very useful to mix grays. At this stage, I'm only concerned of giving the drawing a bit of color. We are just painting the light, so I'm keeping my colors very pale, with the white area being the brightest plane. You can see that I'm making decisions on the fly. I still take a second or two to decide how to proceed before touching the paper with the brush. I take my time to observe, experiment. Sketches are your best bet at trying something new. Sometimes it succeeds, sometimes it fails. The good thing is that you'll always learn something from it. Try to simplify what you see. Painting looks best when we keep it simple and focus on representing the light hitting planes instead of painting with accuracy how something looks like. Now it's time to let the first layer dry a bit before applying our second one. Okay, now I'm going to add the dark layer, a shadow pass. Don't be afraid to go too dark or too light. You can always spray a bit of water to dilute the pigments, or go darker later. To soften up an edge, take a clean brush with a touch of water on it and gently touch the edge. Also try not to hold your brush like a pen, holding it on the handle will promote loose marks. That thing you see on the top right of the screen is actually my water pot. I often dip my brush in it to clean the brush or to make mixes or simply to soften edges. You see that as soon as I start adding shadows, things start getting three-dimensionality. Then I go again with a bit more pigment over some wet shadows to make them a touch darker. I try to keep my colors vibrant by trying not to overuse browns or blacks. But these colors have the tendency to dull a color or make it muddy looking. extra very dark details contribute to pull the painting together. Also adding some drier brush strokes for the horse mane, few extra details and dark accents, and this quick sketch is done. Also at the end I decided to go a touch darker on the neck and the cheek area. I was not too convinced from how light it appeared. So let's try it again, this time with a full body. I start again with an oval to define the rear of the horse, to position the horse on the paper so not to risk to go outside the border of my page. Then I delineate the shoulders and the back. I'm trying to be very loose, you can see it from how I'm holding the pencil, kinda like I'm holding the brush when I paint. Moving on to the legs, I'm hovering over the drawing to check for proportions and to understand where to place shapes in relation to shapes already down on the paper. I realized that the proportions are a bit on the long side for the belly area, so I decided to shorten it a little, and now it looks more proportionate. Again, we don't want to overdo the drawing, just to have some guides to paint over. This time I also decided to clean my palette, as I don't want all these reds that are on it, and I decided to spray the drawing with some water, to have some blending between colors happening on the page. In this case the horse is a white horse, so its color will be influenced by the reflections from the environment, ambient light and the sky. This stage I'm adding colors with the wet on wet technique, so that they blend together, creating soft edges. This will nicely show the variety of colors that the white planes on the horse pick up from the different directions, reflecting the environment. See how these dark accents blend with the colors underneath since the paper is still wet. Also, we will need to wait for the paper to dry a bit to keep working on this area. My darks are usually a combination between ultramarine blue and burnt sienna or burnt umber, and sometimes a touch of alizarin crimson. If you have reached this far and enjoying the video, please consider leaving a like or subscribe to my channel. It really helps with pushing my content to more people. Thank you. I usually put something behind my sketchbook or paper if it sits on the table. In this case, behind my block I put a roll of tape, to be able to have the surface inclined towards me. It's good practice for two reasons. The first is that you probably want your surface to sit perpendicular to your point of view, to avoid creating drawings that are stretched in one direction, as if the paper was laying flat on the table, you'd be seeing it in perspective and without noticing, end up with a drawing that has bad proportions. And the second reason is that you want your colors to blend and flow, and for that you need gravity. It's time to pull this sketch together with some extra shadows, some extra colors, soften edges here and there, and that's it. Let's listen to some music and enjoy the rest of this video.